Thank you, Ms. Dana. We're gonna kick it off to our next resident leader, Mr. Ronald Toppings. He's gonna be introducing the candidates. If there are any candidates on, we noticed some of the candidates are here already, but just some housekeeping. If you are here, please direct message me in the chat box so I can let the moderator know that you are here. And without further ado, my name is Marquise Jenkins. For those of you who don't know, look for me in the chat box if you are a candidate and just check in with me and I will pass that on to our moderator. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ronald Toppings.
Thank you, Marquise, very much. Good evening to all RPPH allies, other folks who are here. We're glad to have you at this Mayor's Forum. And I just want to go over some of the rules for this forum, so please pay close attention. First of all, I want to, after I'm finished speaking, I'd like to do a candidate introduction for each person that are here, so we'll know actually who's here. Candidates, you will have 2 minutes to respond to questions that are asked, and not more than that. Otherwise, you will be muted. Participants who are not speaking, please unmute keep your mics muted unless you're called upon. Questions may be entered into the chat box as well, provided as long as we have time allowed, we'll be able to ask the candidates and for an answer or either forward it to them as well. We want to, first of all, thank you all for coming and responding to our request in this Mayor Forum. We wish you well and good luck. I don't quite have all the list of candidates that are here. I am aware that Jocelyn Taylor is here. I'm also aware that Diana Morales is here. So I'm not quite sure who else is here. So please, someone inform me. Thank you. So my first question will go to you, Miss Diana Morales.
Pause for 1 second. We're going to give each of the candidates 2 minutes for our introduction.
Oh, that's right. Absolutely. I'm so sorry jumping ahead. So please forgive me for that. So each candidate that is here, that would give me recognition of who you are. Please give us an introduction of yourselves. Thank you. Diana, you may begin.
Thank you so much, Ronald. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Diane Morales. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I am a first-generation Black Latina, born and raised in Bed-Stuy. I'm also the single mother of 2 young adults. My parents lived in NYCHA, and I have dedicated the last 20 years or so of my career of working to help low-income, marginalized Black and Brown communities, immigrant communities, access education and economic opportunities to overcome the systemic and the structural barriers that for too long have impacted our communities disproportionately. Most recently, in the last 10 years, I worked in the South Bronx, in the poorest congressional district in the country. And I spent a lot of my work, or dedicated a lot of my work during that period of time, focused on several NYCHA developments in the South Bronx. And in that capacity, one of the things that I did was actually to develop job training programs that provided young adults in particular with access to careers in the healthcare field. In partnership with Montefiore Medical Center and Hostos Community College, the graduates of that program actually went on to exceed national promotion and retention rates across the country in the healthcare field. I also created successfully an after-school enrichment program that supported the literacy development of our students and actually was replicated citywide by the Department of Youth and Community Development. I have spent my entire career serving our communities. I am a reflection of our communities. And I think that it is time for our communities to actually be front and center. We have seen over the course of the last year, we've seen the devastation that the COVID-19 pandemic has wreaked on our communities. But we also know that that devastation started long before COVID-19. And it is time for us to bring equity and justice to the center by prioritizing and elevating our communities, low income, Black and Brown communities that for too long have been left behind. I am also committed to public housing and housing for all. And I see that my time is up, so I will stop there. I am looking forward to having this conversation with all of you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ms. Morales. Our next person for introduction will be Jocelyn Taylor.
Hi, Ms. Taylor. If you are speaking, you are still on mute.
Thank you. That won't be the first time I did that, Marquise. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you guys so much. My name is Joycelyn Taylor, and I'm running to become the 110th mayor of this city and the first woman to hold the position of mayor in the city of New York. Just to tell you a little bit about me, when it comes to the NYCHA developments, I am NYCHA. I started a campaign that talks about the fact that I am NYCHA because I'm someone who grew up in NYCHA. I grew up in East New York in pink houses in a development which is in East New York. I'm the single mom of a son. When my sister passed away, I stepped up to help raise her kids as well. I've done a lot of things in this city. I've worked for the State Division of Housing. I work for Fortune 500 firms. I also started my own business in this city. And if you know what it's like to try to operate within the city of New York, and I'm sure that you guys do, you know how challenging that is. I started a nonprofit organization to assist minority and women-owned businesses with getting access to opportunity because the city spends $22 billion a year on the procurement of goods and services. And I understand the importance of, and significance of ensuring that the dollars that go into the pot need to match who and how those dollars are spent with. And that when we spend those dollars in our community, that means changes for us. Changes as it relates to home ownership, changes as it relates to education and so many other things that we talk about and so many other disparities that we talk about. And I got into this race because I love this city. You know, I love this city and I see us talk all the time about the disparities that exist, but words and actions need to start to match because we knew about these disparities before this pandemic happened. The pandemic just exasperated the situation. The city hasn't invested in these minority communities, NYCHA included, for a very long time. So I'm someone in this race that is going to ensure that all talk politics ends. Words and actions are going to start to match. And we're going to ensure that every community has the same level of resources intentionally. So I'm happy to be here today. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you, Ms. Joycelyn Taylor. Are there any other candidates that I'm not aware that's here?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go, Paperboy Prince.
Okay, who is this?
Hi, Paperboy Prince, Paperboy Love Prince. How's it going?
That's fine.
Hey, Paperboy, do you mind turning your camera on so that we can spotlight you?
Hello.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you have 2 minutes to give us a little introduction about yourselves. 2 minutes.
Paper, yeah. It's our time. One love. I hope everyone is doing well, having a great Sunday. So happy to be here. I have a message on my heart for you all. We can manifest whatever we want. We can create whatever we want. We can create the most beautiful, amazing New York that has ever been. And we're ready to use another level of thinking to create that society. You know, for so long, we've had politicians who only think inside of this same box, right? Who don't think about our spirituality, who don't think about our humanity, who don't think about our unity when guiding us and leading us. And we've seen in the pandemic how that really hurts us. And, you know, our campaign for mayor is about creating a utopia. We're not about fitting in with the status quo. We're not about the normal way of doing things. We're about taking us into the future, a beautiful future that works for everyone. And that really highlights and gives back to those who have been forgotten in times of the past. So my plan for NYCHA is what a lot of people are calling the most progressive and futuristic plan of all time, and that's to turn NYCHA into mansions. We want to turn these buildings that have been used to keep people in a certain mindset. We want to expand that into mansions. We want to give people the best of the best, right? Instead of the bare minimum. And I'm super excited about that. So many other things we're working on. Spreading love is at the center of this campaign. Universal basic income, healthcare for all, a greener New York, more futuristic schools, and housing for all as well. So many other things that we're fighting for, but I just wanted to share that with you. I'm super excited to talk about a future beyond what is right now. So yes, I'm here helping out some family today. So I may have to run a little early, but I was excited to share that with you. And I'm so happy about all the work you're doing, and thank you for inviting me. Paper, yeah.
Thank you very much for your response and your introduction. Are there any other candidates that I'm missing, Marquise?
I think we got through them. We are still waiting for some other candidates to show up. I got some text. So why don't we keep the program moving and jump right into the question?
Absolutely. I'm going to start with the ones who I have already allowed to give an introduction and so forth. So let's start with Ms. Diana Morales. My first question, Ms. Morales?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, can you pop your screen up? Okay, there you are. I see you. My first question to you would be, what does the concept of public housing mean to you?
That's a great question. So, to me, public housing is actually it's a right. It's a precious commodity. It provides vital and critical stability in the lives of many, many New Yorkers. Having had parents who lived in NYCHA, I recognize what it did for them in terms of being able to provide them with a base and a foundation of stability so that they could, in fact, live in dignity and work and raise their family. I think for too long, public housing has been, there's been too much divestment from public housing and too much neglect in our public housing. I don't think that it is a coincidence that divestment started when the residents of NYCHA became primarily Black and brown. And I think it is time for us to demand what it is our residents need, which is the full reinvestment in NYCHA. And to me, it is a critical part of being able to provide dignity and housing for every New Yorker, which is a critical part of my platform and something that I guarantee moving forward. And so my administration will reinvest in NYCHA, starting with $1.5 billion that I will also seek to have matched by the state at a minimum, in addition to additional resources from the recovery funds that we are expecting from the federal government.
Thank you for your response. I appreciate that. I'm going to move on to the next candidate. Let's go back to Paperboy and Prince, and let's let him answer the same question. Thank you, Diana, for your time. We need Paperboy Prince.
Yes, could you repeat the question?
Okay, I'm going to absolutely do that, sir. What does the concept of public housing mean to you?
The concept of public housing, to me, is a program that is there to, help those that need when it comes to housing. But what I see it as is something that can be so much greater, something that can be so much more futuristic, honestly. I mean, when you look at what public housing currently is, it's been an opportunity for those in power, many politicians, many contractors, to get rich and to siphon off money that's supposed to go to the residents to make themselves richer. A lot of contracts are overpriced. A lot of them have a lot of fake billing inside of them that, you know, takes money not only from the taxpayers, but the people that are actually living in public housing. So this corruption that has been going on so long and hasn't been talked about has actually been watered and fostered to grow by our current politicians. Is something that we really seek to root out of the public housing system, you know, and use that creativity that we have, that ingenuity that we have to create a completely new, exciting vision when it comes to public housing. I mean, where you live determines where you go, where you grow. It determines what a generation's imagination can be. And our current, what we currently have in public housing, you know, I mean, just from a security standpoint, right, is nowhere near to today's standards. And if you look at so many other things that we can do when it comes to beautification, and again, that's why I think fighting for mansions for NYCHA is the best vision there. A lot of people that have currently been fighting, you know, they fight for a bare minimum, and then we end up with less than that. So that's why I say, why not go to the top? Why not have something that's amazing, especially when it ends up lasting for so long? You know, they keep the buildings.
Excuse me, sir, but you have reached your time.
Okay, thank you. Paper, yeah. One love.
Okay, thank you very much for your response. Next, same question would go to Ms. Joycelyn Taylor. What does the concept of public housing mean to you?
You know, conceptually, to me, public housing means that the government is stepping up and it's doing its part and is investing in creating housing that is affordable to the residents of this city, that is decent and gives them an opportunity to thrive and flourish. We live in a city where we've seen in the past couple of years, thousands of units of housing built, right? There's not a shortage of housing. I don't believe there is. But what there is a shortage of is affordable housing. So that's where the government should step in and do its part to create not just housing as it relates to apartments, but also what happened to that American dream of home ownership. You know, when I first lived in pink houses, I was born in that development. When we lived there, we were the only Black family that was living in that building. And there were so many other, you know, families that were there, white families that had the opportunity to utilize public housing as a stepping stone to be able to own a home afterwards. That's what public housing should lead to. And public housing should conceptually help to create home ownership opportunities for those residents that want it and are able to become homeowners. So conceptually, it means that the government is doing their part and they're providing housing for those who cannot afford the luxury housing that is being built right now. Because right now we don't have 75% of the residents in the city that are living luxurious lives that could afford, you know, $2,100 for a studio apartment. The government has to step up and it has to do its part.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor, for your response. Those of you that are interested in asking questions, please put them in the chat box. Also, please keep your focus on Dana and I. So when we put our hands up, that you will please be cautious of the time, that your time is up. You need to have it wrapped up. So thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to.
Mr. Ronald, I just want to flag that candidate Ray McGuire just joined us.
You're on mute, Ronald.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, Dana. Thank you so much. Mr. McGuire, you missed
You're
your
tuned in
introduction
to
call, so we're gonna just have to
GHCR,
start
Grant
to jump right
House's
into
Community Radio,
questioning,
the soul of the
that we've
Upper
already
West
asked all
Side.
the candidates that are here. So if you're here, the next question would be, the same question would be, as we've asked everyone, would be, what does the concept of public housing mean to you? And you have 2 minutes to respond.
But as a contract of public housing means to me that how public housing operates needs to be decided together with the residents of public housing. We need to have transparency and accountability from top to bottom with NYCHA. We need to have the training, the staff to treat residents with respect, decency, and to be accountable. And as I've said in my housing plan, decisions about PAC rat and the blueprint for change will be made by the tenants in individual buildings. If they decide to utilize the programs, they'll be able to choose from pre-approved operators themselves. I want to comply with Section 3 and provide workforce training, which is part of my economic comeback plan, which is identified as the largest, most inclusive economic comeback plan in the history of this city. 500,000 jobs. Go big, go small, go forward. Focus directly on economic inclusion, which is what I've been doing for the past 4 decades. And my track record there of creating jobs, creating wealth for Black and brown people is more than the entirety of the rest of the candidates combined. So I would make sure that we would comply with Section 3, workforce training, employment, contracting, and all the other economic support. I would return NYCHA community centers to the residents where the seniors, youth programming, expand the cornerstone programs for every residence. I'd make sure that the development of open spaces are free from trash and debris. And I'd prioritize capital improvements around security and modernization that are going to promote safety for all the tenants and meaning including elevators, cameras, doors that are secure, refrigerators, stoves, sinks, lead abatement, all the things that people have promised up to this point, but we've fallen back on. And as we know, the deficit in NYCHA has gone from $7 billion to $40 billion. And my plan includes making sure that we address that with the highest level of prioritization. My housing plan, which I've just come out with, identifies the increase in housing in New York City by 350,000 units or 10%. And it includes building deeply affordable housing, including especially housing for seniors. And that's my vision for public housing.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. We appreciate that. We will be moving on to our next set of questions. Those of you that are putting things in the chat box, we will eventually try to get to you as possible, but please hold on because we have a list of questions that we are trying to get done. Our next set of questions will go to Ms. Diana Morales. Ms. Morales, what do you see as the future of public housing in New York City and nationally, and how would you improve this dynamic? Do I need to repeat it?
Nope, I got it.
Terrific.
I'm good, thank you. So, I have already mentioned in my opening remarks that I am committed to reinvesting in NYCHA and actually ensuring that NYCHA serves as a model for public housing for the country and the world. NYCHA is actually a premier model potentially for social housing, which is at the core of my platform for housing for all of New York City. What does that mean? I think it means that we need to prioritize addressing the maintenance backlog and restoring decent living conditions for all of the existing residents. I think that means that we need to move towards democratizing NYCHA so that more of the residents have control over not just the current situation, but the future for NYCHA. I think it means we need to adopt a Green New Deal for NYCHA so that we are in fact training and preparing residents and prioritizing residents' access to the jobs and what it will take to actually make those kinds of improvements to NYCHA so that NYCHA again is a model for the Green New Deal and the Green New Economy and what is possible there. I think it also means that NYCHA residents need to be fully educated on what their rights are and how it is that they can and should participate in governance. I have also called for the creation, for the piloting in each borough in one development, a NYCHA-led and operated management company that will be run by the residents, for the residents. I think that also means that NYCHA tenants need to formulate a majority of the NYCHA board, including in the governance role. We need to give NYCHA back to the community, but we need to do it in a way that is backed up with the resources so that we can make the changes and the transformations that we need to make to the physical infrastructure so that you are all able to live in dignity without worrying about lead, without worrying about mold, without worrying about ceilings caving in on you. And so that NYCHA can be a place where everyone feels pride and dignity in their living conditions. And I am committed to doing that by prioritizing NYCHA-led resident leadership in partnering with the city so that you're getting the resources that you need, and we are taking care of the infrastructure challenges that we need to address for the NYCHA residents.
Thank you, Ms. Morales, for your response. That next same question would go now to Paperboy Prince. And I will repeat the question. What do you see as the future of public housing in New York City and nationally? And how would you improve the housing dynamic?
Paper, yeah. I'm excited to help improve the dynamic of housing. The job the government has done this far is lousy. Let me ask you a question real quick. How come people in NYCHA need help and the people that should be helping them always quit? Paperboy Prince, I know it's not legit. We need to spread more love. If I was in NYCHA, I would make sure everybody got a mandatory hug. Paper, yeah. I'm also a rapper and artist. You know, I think the future of NYCHA is beauty. I think it's individuality. You know, when you look at these buildings, every single one kind of resembles the other. There is no opportunity for diversity in the architecture there. I hear a lot of talk about a lot of different things, but no one really talks about the architecture and having more beautiful architecture and how that architecture is a stamp on our time here as humans, you know? So for me, I see the future being a much more futuristic architecture that focuses on having gardens where people can grow their own food and have all of their food needs met there locally in their complex. You know, I see the future as technology integration that actually allows people to have the technology they need to have a fighting chance to be able to succeed in the job market that we have right now. You know, more computer centers where people have these opportunities. I know for myself as a young person, again, I started out with my rap to kind of highlight that. A lot of folks, especially in this time period, know that if you just have the right software, if you just have the right hardware, there's so much that you can do to make yourself viable in the job market, to make yourself more appealing to.
Sir, you have extended your time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your response. Our next question will go to Mr. Ray McGuire. And I will repeat the question. What do you see as the future of public housing in New York City and nationally, and how would you improve this housing dynamic?
So I have written my housing plan, and my housing plan, as I said, calls for the creation of deeply affordable, truly affordable housing. There is an example of this, which we all may know about. If not, we should take a look at it, where there's a Bronx Commons. And in the Bronx Commons, the rents go from $225 a month to $1,999 a month for a 3-bedroom. And what this reflects is the plan that I have to go from homeless to home ownership, which is the American dream. And public housing should be at the foundation of that. It should be public housing that allows our New Yorkers dignity, public housing where a ticket doesn't stay open for 100 and some odd days, public housing that makes certain that we are lead-free, that we're mold-free, public housing that allows us to have community centers for our children, that have computer centers and training for our children as well as for our seniors, public housing that allows us to interact with each other in a dignified manner. So yes, I do have a view, a vision about public housing, which is included in my housing plan, which also is by definition included in my greatest, most inclusive economic comeback plan. We need to make certain that we are included in economic prosperity, shared prosperity, the result of which is that our homes are going to be homes in which we can live with dignity and pay our bills on time. and make sure that we can do that and give the right education to our children and make sure that our neighborhoods are safe. So public housing is included in my greatest, most inclusive economic comeback plan. By definition, 500,000 jobs. Go big, go small, go forward, including NYCHA and NYCHA's residents.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire, for that. The next person that we'll ask a question to, Ms. Joycelyn Taylor, same question. And I will repeat it. What do you see as the future of public housing in New York City and nationally? And how would you improve the housing dynamic?
Thank you. That's a great question. You know, and when I'm mayor of New York City, the future of public housing is going to be bright, because I think that I'm the only candidate that's running for mayor that feels this personally. I still have friends and family that live in public housing in NYCHA, and it's personal for me. And here's the reason why the future of public housing should be bright as well. The president has come up with an infrastructure plan that is $2.2 trillion. $300 billion of that plan is supposed to go to housing. I've already written a letter to the president and the vice president asking them to fully fund NYCHA. This conversation as it relates to VAD and Blueprint and all of this other stuff should be non-issue at this point. We have elected officials that constantly talk about wanting to do things for communities that are disproportionately affected. Well, now's the time for us to put our money where our mouth is and demand that if the government is spending $2.2 trillion, that they fully fund NYCHA. It's critical and it's important. And what will I do to improve the dynamics of NYCHA? Listen, I used to work at AIG, and I remember when the whole housing crisis happened, I worked in the legal department, and you can imagine what was going on at that time and how challenging it was. And one of the things that the government said that was AIG is too big to fail. Well, listen, we have 600,000 residents of this city. We have a development that is too big to fail. We have to take care of these residents. And how we're going to do that is clearly the city of New York can't manage it. We have to break up the developments and give the residents of these developments, many of whom are stepping up to the plate and doing the work in this moment, give them some level of accountability, give them some level of empowerment so that they can ensure that their developments get back to what they used to be. And I know what that looks like. Because when I lived in pink houses, trust me when I tell you, it was beautiful. But when I go there now, I don't see the same thing. So we know how to fix NYCHA. We do it every day with private developments. We have to take the responsibility of NYCHA out of the city's hands because they cannot manage it. We have to create ownership opportunities, and we have to give the residents that live in NYCHA the ability and empower them to be able to take control of the developments that they live in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to switch it over to my other colleague, Ms. Dana, and she will be asking the four of you candidates who've signed on for this the next question. So with no further ado, questions goes over to Dana.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for attending this important forum. I will start with Ms. Morales, and the question will be, do you see public housing as part of the city's greater community? And if so, how?
I'm sorry, you dropped out for 1 second. Do we see public housing as what?
As a part of New York City's greater community? And if so, how?
Absolutely, I see it as part of New York City's greater community. Here's what I see. I see that over the last year, the COVID-19 pandemic has interacted with the pre-existing pandemics of racism, of sexism, of classism, to make things harder and more difficult for our Black and brown families, particularly those that are led by women. At the same time, we know that it is those very communities that have made it possible for the city to operate at the height of the pandemic. We know that there was a tremendous hypocrisy when at 7 p.m. every night last summer, people were applauding and banging their pots and pans in celebration and gratitude of the people that were keeping this city running. And yet, that so much of the necessary relief has yet to reach those very same families and households. My campaign is based on the notion of centering and elevating those very people in every policy moving forward. So that is, I recognize that NYCHA is a critical component of that because that's where so many of our people live. And so my administration is going to be successful because I am taking you to City Hall with me, because I will partner with you in centering decisions that impact you. And that is how I believe we begin to build a new New York City and a new economy for the city that actually prioritizes the people that have been historically left behind, the people whose voices have been ignored, and the people who are left wanting and needing resources in order to be able to live in dignity. So yes, NYCHA is a critical part of moving forward. And to me, what that means is investing in NYCHA. This is not the time for us to fall victim to anybody talking to us about an austerity budget. Because really what that is, it's just code for those of us who have already carried the brunt of these crises to get ready to bear even more of it on our shoulders. And it is time for that to stop. It is time for the investments to prioritize the people that have made it possible to keep this city running. So yes, NYCHA is a critical part of this city. You are, the residents of NYCHA are actually the heart and soul of this city, who we know have kept this city operating and running. And my investment and my entire campaign is based on centering and elevating those very people. So I'm going to City Hall and I'm taking you with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Next, I would like to address the same question to Ms. Jocelyn Taylor. Ms. Taylor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm going to read the question again.
Okay,
Do you
great.
see public housing as part of New York City's greater community? And if so, how?
Yes, I definitely see, public housing as part of the city's greater community because we have 600,000 residents that live in public housing. And, I started a campaign, I am NYCHA, hashtag I am NYCHA. The reason why I started that campaign is because I wanted to bring awareness to the fact of how connected other residents of this city are to NYCHA residents and how important these residents are. The NYCHA residents, my dad drove a bus, and he drove the bus in our neighborhood. Everybody that lived in that neighborhood, if you go there to this day, will say, yeah, I remember your dad. He drove the bus. But see, the NYCHA residents that are still living there are our teachers, some of whom are retired. They're our postal workers. They're our MTA workers. They're our police officers or the civil employees that are working in the police department. So that's why I started the I Am NYCHA campaign. And that's why I want to bring visibility to that, because these are the people that are serving this city every day. They're getting up and they're doing their jobs. They're making sure that the needs of the city, whether they're working with DOB, whether they're working with ACS, wherever they're working, they're making sure that this city continues to run. So they're very important, very significant to the city. We have to show them that we value them. We have to show them that we respect them.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The next person I will address will be Paperboy Prince. I will repeat the question and look forward to your answer. Question is, do you see public housing as part of New York's greater community? And if so, how?
Paper, yeah. It's our time. One love. Thank you all so much. Thank you for that question. Big shout out to all the other candidates too. Much love to all of you. I love hearing what you're doing and all of your ideas. And I really see this process as not a competition, but a collaboration. And for so long, that is what has hurt NYCHA, the politicians using it as a bargaining chip, as a chance for competition and not as a way to collaborate, not only with other community members, but with the world in general. I definitely see NYCHA as a part of our greater community. And, you know, when I spend time there, there's so many seniors with so much knowledge that are so happy. You know, when I stop by and say hello, they're so happy to see us. We do a lot of food work. I've helped to give away over $2 million in food right at my gallery, my business, the paperboyprince.com love gallery. And when we stop by, they're like, oh my goodness, you made my day. It's so great to see you and talk to you. And, you know, a big part of our plan is bringing people together with love, with unity, creating love centers all over this city that seek to connect people instead of separating them. You know, with the pandemic, we saw how the government can separate us whenever they want, but there's never been a concerted effort to actually bring people together across NYCHA, across different races, genders, sexualities, religions, really bringing us together. You know, we need people that are specialists in unity, specialists in love, especially at a time like this. Because a lot of people see the people in NYCHA through a lens of stereotypes, you know, instead of seeing them through a lens of love and community. And I can't wait to help change that with you. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Paperboy. The last candidate to address the same question, Mr. Ray McGuire. Thank you, sir, for being here. The question is, do you see public housing as part of New York City's greater community? And if so, how?
The answer to that is unequivocally yes. Public housing is part of the foundation of New York City across the 5 boroughs. You know, I came to New York City. I was raised by a single mother. I didn't know my dad. My mother was a social worker. And she, along with my grandparents, raised me and my 2 brothers with half a dozen foster children in our home at any point in time. So I know what it's like not to have. When I came to New York City, I had 3 things based on my mother's sacrifices. I had a great education, I had a lot of debt, and I had no money. In what the city has taught me, which is why I love the city, which is why I'm running to be mayor, is the least of thee. When I started with nothing, able to get the opportunity, NYCHA needs to be part of the vision going forward. And all those people who have been in office up to this point have done very little, if anything, to make certain that NYCHA's best days are ahead of it as opposed to its best days being behind it. And so my view in my plan is included a vision of NYCHA, which I've outlined, which also has to include what are we doing with the mental health care for our children in NYCHA and for the residents of NYCHA? What are we doing about the community centers for our children and residents and seniors, elders in NYCHA? And so my vision, my plan, which includes making certain that all New Yorkers have economic development as part of their experience here. I want people in NYCHA to have NYCHA for dignity, with dignity. And I also make sure that those people who have the wherewithal, who continue to work hard, who want to move into home ownership, that we have a path for home ownership. So it's a path into NYCHA with dignity, with everything that needs to be worked, the human decencies that need to be working the way that they should work. And for those people who decide that they want to take on home ownership, that we have home ownership. My plan is to do just that. And my largest, most inclusive economic comeback plan has at its core an uplifting of NYCHA. So in specific, rather than the generalities, my specific for NYCHA are outlined in my plan. Go to rayformayor.com where you can see this in very good relief.
Thank you, sir. Now, at this time, I will turn the question back to Mr. Ronald Hopkins. Ronald, are you there?
Yes, Dana, thank you very much. Very good job. Okay, our first candidate, I'm going to go back to the next question. And that next question will go to, hello? I'm hearing some extra noise. Please mute your mics. Okay, the next question will go to Diana Morales. Okay, do you think there should be significant funding allocated to resident education, participation, and increased self-sufficiency, social initiatives, or is it just about physical repairs and renovations?
Absolutely, there should be significant investments in the residents' education and actually self-actualization. It has to be. It is a critical part of my plan to actually democratize NYCHA, right? If I'm gonna expect and give NYCHA residents the ability to make informed decisions about the developments, to make informed decisions about operating management companies, to make informed decisions in partnership with the city around the Green New Deal for NYCHA and how it is we go about making those adjustments and those renovations, and how it is we go about identifying and training NYCHA residents to qualify for those jobs and really get ready to implement those jobs. It has to come in partnership with the training, the education, and the support that you will all need to be successful, because otherwise it's just sabotage. Otherwise, we're just throwing you into the deep end and expecting you to know how to swim, right? So the city has to invest prioritizing funding for NYCHA. We have to be willing to fight for funding from the state and from the federal government. We've got some good progress over the last couple of weeks, in particular with the state budget and with what's happening on the federal budget, but that's still not enough. And we know that is not enough. There needs to be a lot invested in order to make up for the decades of disinvestment that has happened. So we need to be able to fight for that. And I am in a position to do that. I have relationships at the city level. I have relationships at the state level. And we all know that if New York City calls, Washington, D.C. is going to answer. So that is my commitment to you, not only to democratize NYCHA, but to actually provide you with the resources, tools, support, and training so that you can be successful in operating and leading NYCHA in partnership with your neighbors and the city. The last thing I want to say before I wrap up is, my deepest apologies. I just want to remind you all that I mentioned earlier that I have a 4 o'clock stop. I have another engagement. I'm really proud to have had the opportunity. Can I finish my statement before I go?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm really proud to have had the opportunity to be here with you all. And also my campaign is actually transitioning to an on-the-ground strategy. So I hope to see you in the community, in your developments. Please invite us. We'd love to come. Thank you all. Stay safe and well, but I'm going to take off now. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Morales, just one quick thing before you go.
Sure, Marquise.
We have a ton of questions that are being put in the chat box. We're going to reach out to your office. If you could just follow up and just answer those questions.
Absolutely.
And we'll get them
Absolutely.
back to the residents.
Yep. Happy to do that. Send them over. We'll respond. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question would go to Ms. Jocelyn Taylor. And the question reads, do you think there should be a significant funding allocated to resident education, participation, and increased self-sufficiency, social initiatives, or is it just about the physical repairs and renovation?
Thank you. No, I don't think it's just about the physical repairs and renovations. We talk about success all the time, but what does success look like? And are we investing in success? The needs of the NYCHA residents isn't just the repairs. There's a lot of other things that have transpired within NYCHA that need to be addressed as well. And, as mayor of the city, I'm going to make sure that we invest in what we say we want to see. We don't see that happening now. If you look at the mayor's budget for the upcoming year and you look at what we're investing in, that'll show you what we care about. So as mayor, I want to make sure that words and actions start to match. If we want
you're tuned in to GHCR.NYC,
we want their
Grant
children
Houses
to be able
Community
to grow
Radio,
up in dignity and have the respect that they deserve as well. If we want that, if that's the Z, and we're starting at the A, we got to think about the B, C, D, E, F that goes into that to ensure that we see the result. And that's what we don't see a lot of. We see a lot of times government talking about what it wants to see happen, but we don't see the plans and implementation. We don't see the results that, we're anticipating. As mayor, I'm going to make sure that that's different. We're going to have measurable goals. I want to ensure that everybody that lives in NYCHA is employable. And that, when we do turn it over to, ownership opportunities, we give people the resources that they need if they're interested in ownership opportunities. We give them the education that they need. Because listen, when I got ready to purchase my home, it was scary. It was good to be able to have some resources available, to be able to let me know how to manage that process. So we want residents to be successful. If we're talking about ownership, if we're talking about management, we have to ensure that we give them the tools that they need to see that success. And as mayor, I won't just talk about it, I will actually do it intentionally.
Thank you very much for your response. Next question goes out to Ray McGuire. Same question. Mr. McGuire, do you think that there should be significant funding allocated to residents' education, participation, and increased self-sufficiency, social initiatives, or is it just about the physical repairs and renovation?
The answer is I got here through education. And so the funding that goes out has to, by definition, especially given where we are in the crisis of education, include education. And education is defined as the following: making certain that our kids, by the end of the third grade, which is my education plan, every child in New York City can read by the end of the third grade. Why is that? Because all the educators tell us that between 0 and the end of the third grade, our children are learning to read. So I want to make certain, for my account, that every child can learn to read. And I want to ensure that every child has digital and financial literacy. And when I think about finances, we need to make sure that our children have summer jobs. And so included in my plan for NYCHA is making sure that every child has a summer job, every child is digitally and financially literate. And in my plan, where I've allocated $100 million in my comeback plan, the greatest, most inclusive comeback plan, $100 million to workforce training. We need to meet our citizens, our New Yorkers, our NYCHA residents where they are. If you take Rikers Island, the population is between 18 and 24 years old, reads at one third of that reads at a 5th grade level. We need to make sure that we have workforce training to give those individuals who want to work the opportunity to work. And we make certain that we get the education that's necessary to our community. So it includes physical, but it includes so much more than physical. It also includes emotional, social. We have mental health challenges and we need to deal with that. We have substance abuse challenges. We need to manage that. So those funds that I'm describing here, for which I have set aside hundreds of millions of dollars to invest, will invest in not just the physical. The funds that I'm describing are going to invest in emotional, educational, as well as giving our kids the opportunity to have summer jobs so they can move forward and think about the things in which they want to participate. They can become botanists, they can become paleontologists, become astronomers or painters or mechanics, but at least we give them the opportunity and we train them and give them that exposure and have NYCHA be the center place for education.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire, for your response. The next question the same question would go to Paperboy Prince. Do you think that there should be significant funding allocated to resident education, participation, and increased self-sufficient social initiatives, or is it just about physical repairs and renovations?
Paper, yeah. It's our time, one love. Yes, I definitely am on the side of, it's about both. I think they both work together so much, beyond repairs and renovations, we need repairs and renovations to our current society. And I love what's being said about schools. Right now, our schools, we talk about education. Hold up. Can we go? I know we only got 2 minutes, but can I really talk to y'all for a second? We talk about schools, we talk about education, but when are we being educated? Because we're spending so much time in schools and we come out with what that actually helps us in the real world, that actually prepares us to be fighters in the current economy, with people that have money, with people who parents have sent them to private school and all of these things. So we're talking about education when we really need to be talking about intelligence. What can we do to raise the intelligence of folks, the emotional intelligence? our financial intelligence, not just educate them on, let's be honest, the same old white European ideals that have got us into this mess in the first place. So I definitely think, our plan for having love centers that can help to really give knowledge and intelligence to folks in a exciting way, because a lot of this stuff, there are a lot of these resources already out there. We live in the information age. So all of these resources are at a lot of folks' fingertips. The issue becomes that the people that are in power lack the skills to teach it and give this information in an exciting and engaging way, right? That's what's happening. People aren't engaged. There's the goal for it, but there isn't the engagement that's happening. So beyond just the info, we need people that can give this info in an engaging way, and that way people can retain information.
Thank you for your response. I'm going to turn it over to our next other leader to ask a question. Mrs. Torres, you are up for the next question for the mayor candidates.
And Mr. Topping, and Mrs. Eldon, I did notify that I had a hard stop, and I've been able to go a little later, but I had a couple of sermons that I had to listen to today, so I apologize for my tardiness and wanted to let you know that out of respect. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Mr. McGuire, for making us aware of that. That's very important, but thank you.
And just again, same as I asked Ms. Diana Morales, Mr. McGuire, if we could follow up with you with the question from the residents in the chat box, we'll send it to you and ask you to answer the questions as much as you can, please.
I would welcome the questions. I welcome all input. This is not about me. This is about we. It's a journey for the future of this city. And at its core, it's NYCHA. So I welcome the questions, and thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Ms. Torres, you're up.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us, to the candidates who have shown the residents in public housing respect by coming to our forum to answer our questions. So on behalf of my residents, I thank you for that respect. So my question will go first to Ms. Taylor, and to all the candidates. What will you do to facilitate compliance with HUD regulations 964 and the 964 regulations regarding resident participation? Ms. Taylor?
Sorry, you were breaking up a little bit there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Go ahead.
What will you do to facilitate compliance to HUD mandated 964 regulations regarding resident participation?
Well, the issue is that the reason why these things don't actually take place is because no one has the heart and the determination to make sure that we just do it. It's not as challenging. Sometimes when I look at what the issues are, it's not as challenging as it appears. We have the same level of compliance issues as it relates to the MWBE issues, right? We have so many, firms that don't comply with utilizing MWBE firms and ensuring that they get opportunity. This is by design. So from my perspective, there'll be a level of accountability, ensure that we comply with the regulation, to ensure that the voice of the tenants is heard. This is something that's very important to me. That's why I'm still here on this forum, because, if we want to see change, we have to invest, and we have to be invested in ensuring that residents are heard and we actually take action towards creating it. So what I will do to ensure that there is compliance is that whoever is not meeting the goal of compliance, that I'll ensure that they hold them accountable.
Mr. Paperboy, yeah, Mr. Paperboy.
Hi, could you repeat the question?
Oh, sure, gladly. Okay, what will you do to facilitate compliance to the HUD mandated 964 regulations regarding resident participation.
Yes. Paper, yeah. It's our time, one love. Again, this goes into a lot of what I was saying before. We actually need to find more ways to have people excited and engaged, you know, because for too long, so many people have been forgotten. And what I really want to do is find ways that connect resources to folks and actually listen to people and their needs, because what happens a lot of times is these politicians get in power, they put their friends in power, they put their friends even in NYCHA in power, and they're fighting for what the politicians want instead of what the actual residents want. So the issue comes down to it being an empowerment issue, and having people that are going to speak for those who are the most vulnerable, not those that look out basically for friends and do it the way that it's been done for so long. So kind of our goal and a big part of my goal is using my voice as a weapon for the residents and for the most vulnerable, for those who have been forgotten about, for those who have been lied to, for those who have been taken advantage of. You know, that's one of the things that I do with my art, with my social media, as well as my music, calling out the folks that are in power and amplifying the messages that are there, listening to those who people often brush off. This is the kind of the energy that it's going to take to move us forward. So I really appreciate you all's time and having me. And I want to continue this conversation. I know a lot of these forums end up being kind of a one-way street, but I would love to give you my phone number, 727-379-2327. Let me know what's going on. Let me know how I can actually come out and fight for you and amplify what's the messages and the issues that are going on, no matter how small or how big, to actually provide solutions, because I'm not much on
phone number in the chat
about solutions.
You can put your number in the chat.
Yes.
Residents that want to reach out to you. Thank you for your response. And I hand it over back to Ms. Ding.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Torres. Those were great questions. For the next question, I'm going to start off with Mr. Ray McGuire.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Mr. Ray is still with us. I think we
He's
just
not with us? Okay, so we have Ms. Taylor and who else?
and Paperboy.
Okay, all right, so I'll go with Ms. Taylor. Ms. Taylor, what is your position regarding the NYCHA's blueprint for change?
I am not for NYCHA's blueprint for change because primarily the residents don't want it. And one thing I found in the city is that when residents in other communities don't want something, the city listens to them. I don't think that that's the answer. And I think now more than ever, the blueprint and RAD should be a non-issue. We have to ask the federal government to step up to the plate. If it's spending $2.2 trillion, we have to ask the federal government to step up to the plate and invest in NYCHA in a way that makes the residents of NYCHA whole. Listen, we talk about all the time equity in this city, but the solution for equity can't be that we're putting residents in a position where being poor or living in NYCHA is a full-time job. The solution to equity can't be that we're putting them on Section 8. That's not equity. If I have a home, if I own a home and you have a Section 8 certificate, we're not equal. So we have to address the issue with NYCHA in a way that truly brings us equity. I don't think that blueprint and RAD is that solution. And I think that we must put pressure on the federal and state government in this time. when they're opening up their pocketbooks and they're spending $2.2 trillion to actually use some of that money to invest in NYCHA.
Thank you very much for your response. The same question would go to Paperboy Prince. What is your position regarding the NYCHA blueprint for change?
Paper, yeah. It's our time. One love. You know, with a lot of these programs, they put together a nice name to get a lot of people sold on it. You know, this is something they do at the federal level as well as here in the city and the state. They put a nice name on it because they know a lot of folks won't actually delve in and look behind it. I think that it is a awesome start of an idea, but I don't think that it truly goes far enough to actually give public housing back to the people in public housing and gives enough power over the decisions that need to be made there. You know, for me, my focus is on love and really honing in on love and generational wealth and wealth distribution. You know, people really don't talk about wealth and wealth redistribution, but one of the ways that this city has made so many folks rich via poverty, you know, off of those in poverty, is not making any honest efforts to redistributing wealth. And I feel like NYCHA is a perfect place to do that. One, you know, I'm an advocate for universal basic income, $2,000 a month for all, and definitely the residents of NYCHA fully included in that. But moving beyond that, actually finding ways to redistribute wealth so people that are in NYCHA, they're not only living in great public housing, but their bank accounts are growing and they're able to use this wealth to help empower themselves, because these programs don't empower people. Money empowers people. We know a lot of this is a money issue. When you don't have the money, that's the same reason that these candidates that have millions of dollars from real estate developers and the same people that screwed up NYCHA in the first place, right, can stay in power, because it's the money. It's a money issue. We need to get money into the hands of the folks, not these programs. And we need people that are actually going to talk about that and do that and fight for it like their life depends on it.
Thank you so much.
Paper, yeah.
Thank you so much. Now, Marquise, I'll turn it over to you. There's time for questions in the chat box to be answered. Marquise?
Sorry, I was on mute talking to myself, but I'm scrolling through the questions now, scrolling all the way to the top to make sure I try to get it in the order.
Yeah, because there are some great questions, so let's try to get to them.
All right, let's see. There were a ton of questions. All right. There was something about policing from Miss Claudia. As a candidate, what would you do about the over-policing that's taking place in public housing? Ms. Jocelyn, you want to do this one first?
Sure, no problem. You know, when I look at the issue of policing, I feel like there's two sets of police departments. It's one police department that keeps communities safe, and it's another police department that polices Black and brown people. And we have to be from that. You know, policing is something that's a reaction to what we haven't invested in. And if we want to see different outcomes, we have to invest in the results that we want to see. But also, I think that the over-policing of NYCHA residents has to be addressed. And the lack of respect for NYCHA residents from the police department has to be addressed as well. Listen, I'll tell you this story. About 2 years ago, I started a Pink House cleanup day in a development that I used to live in. And last year when I did the development cleanup day, I got in contact with community affairs. You know, I contacted everyone management to let them know about what we were doing. Well, lo and behold, there's 2 officers on the beat. I guess no one told them what they were doing, and they came over to us. And even me as a mayoral candidate, the lack of respect was there. It was just an immediate, you can't be here. So we have to change that dynamic, and we have to bring back some community safety. It should be about keeping NYCHA residents safe. It shouldn't be about policing them, and it should be about ensuring that they too, they get a level of mutual respect from the officers as well as the residents. That's what we need to get to.
Thank you. Paperboy, what say you about the over-policing in public housing?
Wow, thank you so much for asking this question. It's so important. I feel like public housing is ground zero for over-policing. And I'm gonna say that again. I know that public housing is ground zero for over-policing. I'm a non-binary candidate, but I live in this body as a Black Afro-Latino male. So I've seen some of the worst when it comes to the city's police, and I'm also an artist. I've toured around the country and around the world and seen how different police departments operate. And I'm saying that to say, I feel like there's a lot of nice police officers here in New York City. A lot of nice guys, nice women that are just, just regular New Yorkers. A lot of other folks that are terrorizing our communities, that are literally terrorizing our communities, and they're getting rich. We got to remember, the city and contractors are getting rich off of NYCHA. Every single car, every single light, every single uniform belt that you see in the community is being paid for by taxpayers, and they're getting rich off the backs of NYCHA residents. When we talk about over-policing, then that comes into over-incarceration. Why is it a NYCHA to prison pipeline? Like public housing becomes a pipeline to the prisons. And the police are Uber straight there. And nobody is talking about it. That's why my message of love is the most needed message right now. I went far, the same way I said, let's turn NYCHA into mansions. I said, we need to abolish the police and replace them with a love team. I understand that safety is an issue. I understand that also, there's a lot of things that cause crimes, right? The actual causes of crimes aren't being focused on. We're just focusing on the end result. If we had an actual love team that focused on de-escalation, that focused on meeting people where they are and meeting those needs right there, we would actually have a police department that fought for the people. But we don't have that. We have a police department that is fighting for the elite, that is fighting for white supremacy, and is not fighting for our safety. Again, they also have a hard job. They have a very hard job. We're giving them too many jobs dealing with people who are the violent, mentally ill. The police shouldn't be doing that job. We need a love team focused on healthcare, focused on de-escalation, focused on love that is there, instead of these police that the only thing they know how to use to solve a problem is a gun.
Thank you, Paperboy. You have overgone your time. Thank you for that answer.
Thank you.
Marquise?
Yep, I got a second question. My second question is around the digital divide in public housing. Access to Wi-Fi is very limited. What is your plans to address that digital divide for public housing residents? Paperboy, I'm gonna go to you first, and then Ms. Taylor next.
Paper, yeah. It's our time. This goes back to one of the first things that I was saying earlier on in this forum, knowing the importance of providing hardware and software to our residents, not only the youth, but our adults and our seniors as well. That hardware and software divide is so important. When I'm talking about software, I'm talking about Adobe programs. I'm talking about Apple programs. I'm talking about mobile programs on your phone. I'm talking about music programs, video programs, writing programs that need to be had, that we should also have discounts for, that we should be able to get group discounts for residents. I'm talking about actual hardware. And when we mention hardware, we're talking about, cell phones, tablets, laptops, desktops, not just the old stuff, but that's actually there. You know, I've worked with folks in Mesh NYC, which is a movement to help bring free internet through a mesh across the city that's on tops of lots of buildings there, and you can actually have them sign that up. But right now, Optimum and these Verizon and these other companies have a monopoly over our internet and mobile digital services. So we need to give that back to the people. So the first step is making that public. You know, internet right now, especially during the pandemic, is a human right. Access to Wi-Fi, fast Wi-Fi, especially in New York City, is a human right. And we need to find ways to do that and take it out of these global conglomerates' hands that are controlling our access to information and put it in the hands of the people. And when I say the hands of the people, I don't mean the government either. I think that we actually need to find ways to put it in the hand of the people first, not the government or these private companies.
Thank you so much. Ms. Taylor?
Thank you. That's a great question. You know, and it's not only how the city operates with NYCHA residents as it relates to technology. There's so many other agencies within the city where we don't utilize technology appropriately to ensure that things are more streamlined and efficient. But as a mayor, I know that in Queensbridge, you know, there was a pilot program to be able to bring Wi-Fi for the residents of Queensbridge. And, you know, I talked to some of the residents there, and it doesn't seem that that's as successful as we would have liked. But I want to go back to that program and see what worked and what didn't work, and how we can pilot that program to bring it to other developments. Because we do need to ensure that everyone has access to Wi-Fi. And let's just be honest, some of these, you know, service providers, their costs are just so exorbitant. You know, even myself as a private resident, when I look at my cable bill, I'm like, what's going on? What am I getting for, you know, all of this money? So we have to make sure that the city invests in ensuring that every resident has access to technology. And in this day and age, it makes sense. And I know that the city work with various providers.
You're tuned in to GHCR.NYC, Grant Houses Community Radio.
And the city is not holding them accountable. As mayor, I'm going to ensure that we hold them accountable, that we look at what happened in Queensbridge, establish some best practices, and have a plan that ensures that every resident in public housing has access to technology.
Thank you.
Ms. Dana,
Marquise?
thank you. Ms. Dana, did you see a question in the chat box you wanted to raise?
Actually, there was one that I saw, and it's a conversation more than anything else that I'm well aware of. And the question comes from Ms. Papa here at St. Mary's. She says, what do you do to ensure future prospective residences will be screened for tenancy to sustain and maintain a decent quality of living in public housing? And how can this screening for residents be enforced to ensure a high standard of living to be enjoyed by all?
Who are you kicking the question to first?
I would go with Ms. Taylor first, since she's already on my screen.
Sure. You know, when I grew up in pink houses, there was a screening process in order for residents to be able to get, you know, an apartment in the development. And I think it's important because, especially if we're investing, you know, billions of dollars into ensuring that these developments are brought back into its glory, we want to make sure it's maintained, because we know what happens if it's not maintained, right? The city, state, and federal government is not going to want to reinvest. But I also want to say this, is that when I also lived there, one of the things that they did, it wasn't just a screening, but every year they would come and inspect your apartment. And your apartment had to be to a certain standard. And that's why it's so important, even with these kids, that we bring certain basic skills that people need to know what it looks like to maintain a decent apartment. We can't assume that everyone knows that. But let's make sure we have effective communication and we manage what our expectations are for the residents. And we also manage and ensure that we give them the resources that they need to make sure that these apartments are maintained. We do not want to invest billions and billions of dollars into developments to see them not appreciated and taken care of. Right?
Thank you.
We have to invest in screening the tenants. We have to get back to the model of, you know, inspecting the apartments. And it's important too, because that will be an opportunity for the management of the apartment to know what they need to do.
Thank you so much, Ms. Taylor.
Thank
Paperboy, the same question for you. What will you do to ensure future prospective residences will be screened for tenancy to sustain and maintain decent quality of living in public housing? And how is this screening for residents can be enforced to ensure a higher standard of living for those involved?
Paper, yeah. It's our time. You know, with when it comes to screening, there's a lot of ways that folks can present themselves to pass whatever screening. They already have friends or family members that have done it before, so they know what boxes they need to check off and how they need to present themselves to pass the screening. But, you know, later on they unravel or things happen in life or their health deteriorates or what have you. And there may not maintain their unit the same. This goes back to the central core message of this campaign, which is community, which is love. You know, fostering community, when you have neighbors that actually care about their neighbors, we have great communities. You know, when you know that, hey, what's been going on with this person? I haven't seen them in a while. You're actually able to uphold your community and make it better. So we want to foster an actual community. And that's why I talk about having love centers, creating those on every block and reinvesting in the community centers there, and expanding them that in ways that actually bring communities together. You know, they say it takes a village to raise a child, but I like to say it takes a village to raise a village. You know, each one teach one, each one reach one. If everyone looked out for one person and looked out for each other, we would have a better community. You know, a lot of people don't know their neighbors. They don't know everyone around them. And, or sometimes they don't like them. There's an issue, something happened. We need to have ways that actually people can mend these relationships and come together. You know, we already live in such a stressful environment, stressful city, and now we're in this pandemic. Why aren't there more resources and more ways to bring people together? You know, why aren't we paying for dinners for neighbors or, you know, movies or, you know, whatever it is that bring people together and allow them to have great moments together and so we have stronger communities.
Thank you so much, Paperboy. I have one more question. Marquise, do I have time? Okay. This actually is a personal question. As a senior citizen who lives in NYCHA, what are some of your thoughts or your innovative ideas that would work towards the growing senior population in public housing? Ms. Taylor, I'll go to you first. Ms. Taylor?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You know, growing up in NYCHA, our seniors were the matriarchs of the development. They were the ones that, you know, kept us in check. They were the ones that made sure that we were okay. And in this moment, we have to return the favor. So we have to make sure that we invest in, you know, giving them resources to have a quality of life as well. You know, I have a friend of mine that lives in pink houses that her mom, you know, still lives there. And she reached out to me because of issues that she was having with management. You have to understand that a lot of seniors may not have resources and other people that are, you know, available to help them with certain things. So knowing that, and knowing that we know that, we have to look at how can we as a city bridge that gap and be that resource? How can we ensure that our seniors are not stressed out, but able to live a quality of life? Have we ensured that if they need home health aides, that they have it? Have we made sure that we've maintained the senior center? Because a lot of them like to go to the center and play cards and do various things to, utilize their time during the day. Those are the things that I want to invest in. Does someone make sure and check on them? Let's provide a resource for them, to someone that could check on them to see if they're getting their medication. If there are any issues, can they help them with getting access to Accessorize? The resources that are available. So I think it's very important that we invest in our seniors. Like I said, when I was growing up, the seniors in the neighborhood, they really showed us so much love. They were the matriarchs of the development. They made sure that we had something to do. They ran the free lunch program in the boiler rooms, in the rooms. So we have to make sure that we return the favor and give them the resources that they need. And we know what they need. I know personally from having taken care of my mom what some of the challenges are. And I'll make sure and ensure that other seniors don't have to go through those same challenges.
Thank you so much, Ms. Taylor. Paperboy, same question. Can you unmute yourself?
Could you
Same
repeat
question. As I am a senior, and I'm part of a growing population in NYCHA, what innovative thoughts or plans to benefit those senior citizens in NYCHA?
Yes, thank you for asking this question. And, first off, I want to say I love all of the seniors so much. You all are so special, and I can't wait till
Don't butter me up. Don't butter me up.
No, I'm not trying to butter you up. I'm really trying to give respect and honor that you deserve. And for so many in our generation, we haven't been taught to honor our seniors in the way that we should. We should be giving you all everything. We should be celebrating you all and giving you all everything out of selfishness almost, so that when we get to that time, that we have folks that are doing the same for us. And this is so important to me, as far as the innovative, solution to that, I mentioned our love centers. And because of that, I love, especially when I get to speak to many seniors in NYCHA, I love hearing about times that I wasn't there for. So much knowledge is passed orally. It's not in books, it's not online. And we need to really bridge this gap. So the love centers that I plan to build on every block and transform will have a way where people can come together, where seniors and young adults can come together and we can build bonds and friendships and relationships. Because here's the thing, we have so much more in common than we have then that separates us. So many of our young adults are lonely right now. We have a loneliness crisis of so many people addicted to their phones, addicted to social media. They're lonely. They don't know how to talk about it. They don't know what to do about it. And there's so many of our seniors who are going through this as well, but in a different way. We need to come together. We need to find ways to spread love. I grew up in the church, and growing up in church, there were so many seniors and mothers in the church that looked out, and elders in the church that looked out for me, and that, taught me so many things, that gave us gifts, and that we went over their house and we helped them when they needed help. We need to get that going again and build teams that do that. That's part of what I do. I run a mutual aid organization called Our Food NYC, started over the pandemic. And I mentioned that we've given out over $2 million in food. With that, a lot of our focus has been seniors and people that I've been able to build strong, lasting relationships with, where, I'll go myself and I bring my friends with me, and we'll weed their yard. We'll help them clean up. We'll just talk to them on the phone, have a buddy system on the phone. We need to build, this is one of the reasons I give my phone number out. We need to build more teams and systems like this, again, of community, of love, of bringing people together. During the pandemic, they showed us if they want to separate us, if they want us to social distance, if they want to tell us to stay home on every radio station and television station, they can do that. Why can't they have that same energy for bringing us together, for bringing our seniors together with other seniors, for bringing our children together with seniors, for connecting families together, for having pets and animals that are there for service animals that are there for our seniors as well? Why aren't there more talks about this, right? There aren't. So for me, this is something that I really want to do because I feel like we're missing out. I feel like that's a big issue. You know, when people get to that seniority level in life, they have a wealth of knowledge that they want to share and that they have inside. And, you know, our youth, we're starving for that. We love that and we need that. And it's like the blind leading the blind right now. So having bring us together.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Paperboard Prince. I'm going to give it back to Marquise.
Yes, thank you so much. I think, Ronald, are we ready for closing remarks?
Absolutely, and we thank all the questions that were in the chat. We're sorry that we were not able to get to every last one of them, but we are going to forward them because there's so many. So we thank you all for that one. Any of you candidates, we want to thank you all for showing up and attendance, those that came and left and those that are still here with us. And we'd like for you, if you have any closing, that you may do so at this time. 1 minute. Thank you.
Paper, yeah. It's our time. One love. Thank you so much for having me. This has been amazing. I learned so much. I feel like I learned so much here. And I want to say this. Any questions you all have, feel free to forward them to me. If there's a housing development you live in that you'd like me to visit, come by. I'd love to come by. If there's any elected officials that you want me to use my platform to help call out, put pressure on, that's what I'm here for. So please use me as a resource and as a tool. And I can't wait to see what we do in the future. Listen, we're going to change this world for the better. We're really going to make this a utopia. Our plan is to make utopia and to give you the best life possible. More healthcare, again, a universal basic income, money. We need to put money in the hands of NYCHA residents. It's not being said enough. I'm the only candidate that's also for not only reparations for the drug war, but reparations for slavery that happened here, and so many descendants of slaves that are in the public housing as well. So, but beyond that, we need to put money in the hands of NYCHA residents. Paper, yeah. We need that happening right now because so many of the issues stem back to it being a money issue, a resource issue. So I can't wait to speak more with you. Thank you all so much. An amazing job putting this forum together. And I can't wait to more in the future. Much love. Babe. Yeah, it's our time.
Ms. Taylor?
Yes, I want to just thank everybody for including me in this forum, these amazing questions. Listen, you know, the issues as it relates to NYCHA are very personal for me. And I didn't get into this campaign because I'm looking for fame or notoriety, because I want to be in politics. I got into this campaign because I think, like much of the NYCHA residents, I'm tired. I'm tired of having the same conversations over and over again as though solutions are impossible. You know, one of the things I say all the time, God created heavens and earth. We created the issue with NYCHA. We created homelessness, a failing education system. These things did not happen by osmosis. And the changes that we need are not that challenging, but it's going to come with us electing elected officials who are ready to stop fighting and telling us that they're fighting and put down the fight and get together to create the change I think we all need to see. The things that we're asking for, the repair of NYCHA, you know, investment in low and affordable housing, a decent education. These things are not things that are hard to do. And if we want to see them happen, all we have to do is have the right leadership that will ensure that we invest in the returns that we want to see. This year is going to be a very pivotal year for all of us. You know, we'll be electing a new mayor, a new controller, a public advocate, and new city council members. I just want to implore all of you to think long and hard about your decisions. The time for fighting is over. It's time for us to elect a body of elected officials that are going to get together and do the right thing for the NYCHA residents of this city who they've been comfortable with ignoring for so long, as well as the other residents of the city. And I hope that when you look at what I have to say in my platform, that you'll see that that person, when it comes to mayor, is me. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you much, Ms. Taylor, for your closing remarks response. At this time, we will go ahead and turn this over to some of the demands that we are asking for, and this will be turned over to our resident leader in the Gun Hill Houses, Mr. Robert Hall.
All right, thank you, Mr. Topping. To both candidates that remain, okay, the next mayor must commit to opposing and blocking any privatization of public housing, as well as any plan that does not include resident leadership and decision-making. We must, and I mean we must, keep public housing public. Publicity to denounce any legislation that would implement the trust noted within the blueprint proposal. It is very important that that be complied with. The next mayor of New York City must commit to an opposing and blocking privatization of public housing, as well as any plan that does not include resident leadership and decision-making. You must communicate your support for halting all legislative and judicial adoption of the Blueprint for Change directly to NYCHA, the Monitor, and to HUD. We'd also like to conduct a forensic audit to show where the funding received by NYCHA has been spent for each development, and to share that information with the resident leadership and the residents. Now, these demands are not too complicated. However, we talk about insisting that resident input be at the head of the table, and it hasn't been for years. It's been spoken about, but it hasn't taken place. And we certainly hope the next mayor is cognizant of this fact and wants to implement this direction in the best interest of resident leadership. And basically that's it. I know, Ms. Taylor, you've heard this before, so this is not your first rodeo, but it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's very important that we take our over 600,000 resident leadership that we can get to help the future of New York City. And we will implement the right direction if given that opportunity. So now you've heard it first. All right. Any feedback?
Well, listen, it's well past time for that to happen. And like I said previously, there's no reason why at this point in this day and time with, you know, federal government spending $2.2 trillion, that Blueprint and RAD is even still on the table. You know, that's why I already wrote a letter to the president and the vice president and the governor and the mayor, asking that they step in and they be the voice for the residents of this city in this moment. Let's not let this opportunity pass us by. The time for excuses is done. And if they don't do that, then we know that it's never been about actually helping the residents. It's about making public housing private. We have, the money is there. There's no excuse. So as mayor, I'm going to ensure that we keep this commitment and reinvest in public housing, keep it public. You know, we have to make sure that the residents of this city get some type of equity.
Okay, that's a fair assumption. Paperboy, do you have anything to say with regards to this?
I think Paperboy is no longer with us.
Okay, all right.
Then there was one.
Well, I want to thank you for weathering the storm, so to speak, because it's very important, and it tells us all the story. And I told you, the best thing about a freshman, they become a sophomore. So in order to get resident input, this is the place. So I thank you for staying on, all right? And one more thing, and it hadn't been mentioned, because we forget, we're in a pandemic. We're in a pandemic, and instead of people approaching the pandemic, giving statistical updates, any type of medical ingenuity to help overcome some of the shortfalls that exist, all we're getting is the blueprint for change. And, you know, I was just on a call with the chairman, and a lady talked about having no heat. And she was told, well, that's why you need to vote for the blueprint for change. And this is man's inhumanity to mankind. Things have to take place. So
I agree.
That's where we stand. And I hope we can come forward in a progressive manner. And that's really about it. I'm going to give it back to Marquise so he can close things out. Marquise?
Thank you. First and foremost, I want to give a huge shout out and show some love to our public housing residents. This event today was put on by public housing residents, and this event would have been nothing without the 78 people who participated today. So all of you residents, we are growing a movement, and that movement is growing because of your participation. So thank you so much for coming and listening to what is going on. I want to thank the candidates. Not all of the candidates came, but some of them did come, right? Which is a reflection of which candidate is going to prioritize the things that we need when they become, or if they become the next mayor of our city. We reached out to every single candidate and invited them to participate today. We've heard from the candidates that showed up. We received a message from candidate Sean Donovan's office. Because of prior engagements, he was not able to rearrange his schedule to join us today, and asks us to keep him in the loop. The same is true for Mr. Sean Donovan. He had prior commitments and was not able to join us today. But we will be inviting them back to come and talk with us to make sure that we get their stats. Now, many of the candidates dodged our question around the blueprint. For those of you who don't know and are new to the Residents to Preserve Public Housing, we formed in response to the blueprint for change that was introduced by Gregory Ross. After careful review, discussion, we decided that we were going to do everything in our power to stop this blueprint for change from moving. And so we are going to ask those candidates, every single one of those candidates, and force them to take a stance on the blueprint. And so for those who did not answer the question today, we are going to send that question to the candidates, along with all of the questions that you all asked today. So what's next? What do we do with all of this information and with everything that the candidates said? Well, we are going to take all of their responses and put them on a scorecard and send the information to you so that you can make an informed decision about who is going to be the next mayor to help us address the problems that we have in public housing. We are a body of residents that is dedicated to preserving public housing, and our fight doesn't start today, nor did it start today. We meet every Sunday on Zoom for 3 to 5. Please join us, participate. We want to hear your ideas. If we are going to save public housing, we need to do it together. And there is nothing but amazing experts on this call. So I thank you for walking with us, for struggling with us, and for reaching victory with us, because I believe we will reach victory. So thank you all so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And I hope to see you next week on Sunday.